Hey yogis, welcome to a wake-up call. We're going to start this in a standing position with our feet a good distance apart, toes a little bit pigeon-toed, holding low in the hips. You can pick your toes up off the floor, spread them wide and let them come down again. And we'll send the hips around in a circular motion. The hands are placed so you can witness how well you're completing a 360-degree revolution of your hips. I'm going to keep going in the same direction for a while. If you want to change your goat hula up a little bit, you can change like every 3 or 4 times. And as I say in class, we're really trying to emphasize pressing forward of the hips so you get a good stretch of the 2 hip flexors on the right and left side of your body. Now that we've warmed up just a little bit, also see how far you can go to right and left. So as long as you're not insulting your low back, you can really try to go well to the right and then well to the left and well forward. And if you've been following along with me going in the same direction, it's time to change directions. So we'll try the opposite direction and look for a fluid quality of movement. That might mean that you don't go to your extreme so much, but just find a nice, easy way to go around in a circle. Make sure you have your knees well bent so we don't insult the knees as we make this revolution with the hips. If you want to go faster or slower, do whatever feels right and resonates well for your body today. Okay, coming back to center, we'll make the outside edges of the feet parallel and then step the feet almost together, but underneath the hips so we can have good balance. We'll reach the arms down, out, and up. Right hand holding left wrist, coming over into a side bend, up again. Left hand holds right wrist over to the left side and back up, and one more time to each side. When I do these videos, I go a little bit further just so that you can kind of see what I'm really doing. Okay, now we'll hold opposite elbows overhead and twist right and left, attempting to keep that twisting action happening from the navel up. And that's to make sure that the knees don't get tweaked, and also to start finding some movement in the vertebrae of the spine. One more time to each side. And we'll come back to center and change the hold of the elbows, and now tilt from side to side. You can either try to do this action from the navel up, or you can really let your hips go over to one side and back through, and then try the other side. And we'll do it one more time. Follow along as long as you're not feeling any discomfort in the low back. And coming up through center, let's bring the hands so that the fingertips are facing up toward the ceiling. Turn the palms out and very slowly let the arms float down, taking up as much room with your arms as possible. The arms come all the way down. I'm turning my body so that you can see me put my hands on my hips, like I've slid my hands down into the pockets of my jeans. Lifting up the sternum, drawing the elbows back, and then starting to bring the hips forward. Sternum lifting. The head doesn't have to drop back here. In fact, I really prefer that it doesn't. The hips come forward, but you're not sinking into the low back. Elbows drawing back to feel the big expanse of the front of the chest, and then lift up from the sternum to come up out of that back bend. Next, we're going to interlace the fingers, bend the knees mightily, and press the palms away, rounding back. So it's as if the humerus bone, the head of the top bone coming into the shoulder, is reaching out of the socket. It's not really doing that, but you're really getting a good spread of the upper back And then the arms start to come up overhead, coming through a little bit of a chair pose, arms reaching up, up, up. Straighten the legs, straighten the elbows if you can, and then unlace the fingers and take up lots of room. One more time, letting the hands float all the way down. Okay, we're going to come down onto the mat and have 2 blocks and maybe a blanket nearby, a cruller-shaped blanket if you use that for doing roll-up and roll-downs. I'm coming down onto my hands and knees with the knees together and the wrist just a little bit forward of my shoulders, bringing the right leg back, left arm forward, lifting that back right leg so that the arm and leg are about parallel to the floor. And we're holding bird dog pose as we feel for the ease of the flow of the breath. If the gaze is down just a little bit to the left of your right hand, that means that your neck is in the same trajectory as the top part of the spine. Go ahead and drop down that left hand and knee. Make sure the knees are almost together. We'll raise the right arm forward, left leg back and float it up, holding bird dog pose on the second side. Feel those hamstrings working, feel that low back working, and we'll drop the hand down, drop the knee down, and we're coming back to the first side. Left arm forward, right leg back, and pulsing those extremities up toward the ceiling. Taking a few of these lifts up toward the ceiling. And finally, letting the hand come down, knee come down, and we'll practice on the second side. Right arm forward, left leg back, float the leg up to bird dog, and then find that pulsing action. And finally, hand comes down, knee comes down, and we'll bring our knees underneath the hips, hands splayed open on the floor to take a few rounds of cat-cow. Rounding the back by tucking the tail, dropping the crown of the head, and pressing the back body up toward the ceiling. And then the tailbone flicks up as the sternum comes forward and the chin lifts. Yogis will take this at your own slow, effective, steady pace. And perhaps you want to marry the movement with the breath, inhaling as you look up and exhaling as you curl down. And the next time you come to a flat spine, we'll walk the hands over to the left, coming into a crescent shape. My thumbs are about 12 inches or 14 inches away from one another, so I can feel that broadness at the front of the chest as I take this side bend. And we're just holding that for a few moments. If you've come in too sharply, reset your hands so it's not quite as difficult. And if it feels like a lukewarm shower, you know that you need to come a little bit further in. Let's walk the hands over to take it on the second side. And next we'll practice threading the needle. I'm lifting the left arm up first, coming into a spinal twist, and then dropping down on my left shoulder, turning the head, replacing the right hand so it's someplace that I can really feel getting into that spinal twist. There's an option here for bringing the right leg back and possibly floating that leg up into the air. Finding the balance on the shoulder, the hand, the head, and the knee that are making contact with the floor. And draw the knee forward until it touches down. Press energy down into the right hand to come all the way back up to all fours. And now the right arm reaches up, come all the way down and through, landing on the shoulder and that extended arm. I replace my left hand so I can really feel getting into that spinal twist. You can stay here or bring that left leg back and possibly raise it up into the air. Maybe there's a little spreading of the toes and pressing the ball of the foot as far away from the hip as you can go. And retracting that knee back down toward the earth, press energy down into the left hand, coming all the way up. And now we'll drop down onto the elbows, coming into Sphinx pose. I'm bringing my right leg back, toes curled under, left leg back, toes curled under, and finding my Sphinx plank. Gaze is down somewhere around the wrist level. And here's an option to bring your big toe mounds together and lift up the right leg, coming into three-legged Sphinx plank. And go ahead and drop those toes down and come over to the second side. And drop those toes down. One knee touches down and then the next knee. And we'll press up so we can turn our bodies to get into a position to be able to do roll up and roll downs. You can either have your feet standing or the legs long. Either way, arms forward. And you're looking for a real curve in the back. I'm sorry, I should have said it. This is where you want to put down your crescent blanket folded behind you so that you have a little bit of support as you do this. This would be a good time to do that. For some of you, you'll roll down all the way and come up by bringing the chin into the chest first and reaching the arms forward. If you have a jerking action to be able to get up, then please don't come down all the way. You can practice this with bent knees and just come down halfway or 3/4 of the way. Anything where you can make it back up again. There's a real reaching of the fingers to pull yourself forward. And try not to get stuck in doing just one. I've given lots of options: straight legs, bent legs, halfway down, all the way down. And then of course, when Liz Owen teaches this, she teaches going at a much faster pace. So this is also a possibility if you want to change it up a little bit more. And one more time for anybody who's been following along here. And all the way back up. And next we're going to bring our legs into kind of that Z shape. And you don't have to have blocks to do this, but I like using blocks because it gets us up higher. To use the block, it comes in tight to the hip. The palm of the hand or the heel of the hand is well placed on that block. When we come up, this arm wants to be perpendicular to the floor. I'm starting with my palm on my left side, so my right palm is face up on my right knee, and then in a moment of faith, I press my hips up, 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 coming up onto my knees. If you need to replace your knees a little to make that a good foundation, this would be a good time to do it. And then the hips get pressed forward as I feign a bit of a back bend. The hips are coming forward and the shoulders are pressing back. So I can feel for that expansive part of the front of the chest. Right arm reaches long. And finally, we set those hips down, bringing the right hand onto the left knee. You can either use the block or not. I have a long torso, so sometimes it feels good to use it, but sometimes not. The left hand is behind us to really get that sternum to come forward as we come into this twist. Slowly uncoiling from the twist, bring the block with you. We'll come into Sukhasana just for a moment, and then the left leg goes back. Block gets snuggled in tightly. Go ahead and set the hand well on that. Now it's the left palm face up and pressing down into the block, coming up onto both knees. With that stretch, stretch, stretch of the arm and the hips come forward. Settle into the ebb and flow of a steady breath. And when you're ready, go ahead and bring the hips all the way down. We'll set the block aside. I'm bringing the trailing leg back into the fold. You decide if you want to come into cobbler's pose, if that's too much to have the heels in really close to your hips. Go ahead and bring the feet out a little bit further or somewhere in between cobbler's and diamond shape pose and come forward into a forward fold. You can try doing this with a lift of the sternum and a flat back to start, and then go ahead and round the back of it. And coming all the way up, grab the outside edges of the legs, help them together. I'm turning my body, but you obviously don't have to. I'm turning so you can see me plant my hands down on the floor behind me. We're coming into reverse table. The elbows come back. You decide what degree of turnout you want your hands. You notice that my fingers are facing the same direction as my feet. It can go anywhere all the way back to facing 180 in the opposite direction. You figure out what works best for your wrists. And when you're ready, you lift the hips up off the floor, trying to get your hips at the level of your knees. The head comes back, the sternum again is lifting. Don't drop your head back too far. That's not really how you strike the pose. Go ahead and lift the hips up one more time and then let the hips settle all the way down. We'll bring the feet a little bit forward so the hands can be reaching parallel to one another. Get behind your sits bones so that you can bring your shins up to be parallel with the floor. You can stay here, or maybe you'll start to straighten one leg or nearly straighten and then the other. And perhaps you can get both legs up with the sternum lifting at the same time. And bring that back down into Sukhasana, forward folding, hands down to the floor, and go ahead and release a little tension out of the back by giving the low back a stretch. Pressing all the way back up. We'll go ahead and grab onto your shins to bring the feet forward, and we'll practice one more time with the peace fingers wrapped around the big toes and coming up so that the shins are parallel to the floor and alternating one leg up and then the other. And maybe both legs up at the same time with the sternum lifting. Chin up a little bit to feel that length of the spine like a strong tomato steak. And then the legs can come back down again. I'll turn my body so I'm facing you. Coming into Sukhasana, hands resting comfortably on your knees. Connecting with the rhythm of your breath. Hands together at heart center. Namaste.